Once upon a time, in a country called Africa, there lived an African. Although this African looked exactly the same as every single other African from Africa, this African was like no other. Known to her people as... I can't actually pronounce the name. She was sent as the only chosen one to complete a perilous odyssey. Never before had one successfully journeyed so far beyond their roots as was expected of her. The little African's preparation was on point. It was important that she train the mind which she and no other African had ever had in history. It was important that she learned how to speak proper because of something called the Enlightenment. This required her to completely forget about the myths, the stories, and the irrationalities which came from and are of Africa. It was important that she got all her superstitions, her crazy trance-like dance moves, and her demons out of that headspace where, if she were European, there would be a brain. She needed to forget all about acacia trees and Mandela, her pet elephant she rode daily across the African plains. She had to become civilized and a daughter of science. She was moving on to greater and better things. She was going to become a daughter of Western Europe. That is, Europe's adopted, Vaselined trophy kid for the paparazzi photos and clout. Like all fairy tales, this one ends in complete bliss. Firstly, it turns out Western Europeans are just as inclined to superstition, magic and myth as feral people. Secondly, the African learned how to speak proper, forgetting her native tongue altogether. And thirdly, animal rights came to Africa, so there's no Mandela anymore. But on a serious note, I was shocked by how lacking in spirituality I was in comparison to my more mindful and yogi, new age peers. The only thing we could relate on was Enya. Sail away, sail away, sail away. I have had no problem with what I will now define as new thought ideas and their increasing appeal to a younger, more internet-savvy demographic. Until now. It is important that we start at the beginning of my discontent, which means reflecting again on my little African story. In short, I had the rare opportunity of moving from a non-modern society into a very well-established modern society. Urban cities and the internet suddenly went from having absolutely no place in my life to being at the center of everything I was expected to do. High-tech, shopping malls, people concentrated into gigantic, stuffy cities, incredible efficiency in transportation, business relations, and enterprise. Somehow, what I would have expected to be the chaos of such a situation seemed to present the most detailed, thorough law and order mimicking the intelligence of an ant colony. This is modern life. And it is horrific. It is exploitative, it is unequal, it is, according to one of the greatest political philosophers of all time, Thomas Hobbes, the best of two rather unappealing forms of existence. On the one hand, a short and miserable life consumed by war, fear, and the state of nature. Or, alternatively, a long and miserable life, no longer ridden by warfare, perhaps the occasional proxy wars, and, in this century at least, TikTok. In an incredibly broad sense, a greater life expectancy and the never-before-seen developments in science, urban planning, and the rational organization of people, jobs, and sectors would, in theory, prove an effective distraction from universal fears such as death and the future. A key characteristic of modern life, namely the rational, systematic organization of people, is that the modern individual can more readily, accurately, and subconsciously project themselves into the future. Mama and Papa can not only have dreams of, but can in fact plan meticulously for my entry into a prestigious university as soon as I've clawed myself from the womb. They can do this because, unlike pre-modern Mama and Papa, they live without fear of invasion from the neighbouring village, being wiped out by an unstoppable plague, or the sudden and unexpected loss of income, a home and heirs. I say, however, in theory. In reality, the strides taken by modernity are not so noticeably mirrored by those taken ideologically. Religion, myth, superstition, and magic may have been shunned by the economy in favour of rationalisation. But such things have most definitely not been shunned by those living within modern, mostly Western economies. Modern societies today are tricky. On the one hand, there is extensively well-refined order and reason complementing a global free market economy. This economy promotes modern life as the best and only life worth living, even if it means ecological destruction. On the other hand, modern life has either stripped away or seriously threatened meaningfulness. That is, the legends, the myths, the supernatural, the otherworldly explanations humans so obviously need in order to find fulfillment within this unknown void called life. The modern economy is without doubt godless and lacking in any spiritual drive, beyond that in ensuring its own immortalization. This is bureaucracy and rationality at their finest. Academics have for years and to varying extents attributed the rise in radicalization within modern societies and in response to modernization to the void of meaninglessness left as a consequence of the death of God in the economy. Ultimately, it presents money, mass production, and mass consumption as the be-all and end-all of existence. This project of giving modernity at large meaningfulness has been attempted by various individuals, groups, and countries since early modern times. Television producer and visionary Ronda Barnes is no different in this respect. She is, no doubt, exceptional in being more successful at this venture than most. Her methods are one in a million. But this was not initially the case.
It's hovering on top of me again. It is hovering and it is not an aircraft.
Born in Melbourne, Australia in 1945, Barnes built her career on television, and this is important to remember. In 1997, Oz Encounters UFOs in Australia was produced. It was a 1-hour documentary featuring numerous Australians' encounters and sightings of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Amazon.com features an interesting description of the series. The eye-popping 1-hour documentary is described as an amazing cross-section of case studies from all walks of life: farmers, bank managers, wedding photographers, nurses, doctors, children, housewives, concluding with unbelievable stories told by the ordinary people whose lives will never be the same again. Again, this is important to remember and will sound familiar in due course. Then came Barnes' production of episode 1 of 2006's Sensing Murder, described on Wikipedia as an Australian reality television show in which 3 psychics take on the role of psychic detectives in order to help provide evidence that might be useful in solving famous unsolved murder cases by communicating with the deceased victims. The Australian series went incredibly over budget, which almost bankrupted Barnes. I do not believe Barnes' dependence and interest in the paranormal, the spiritual, and the unexplainable to have been merely coincidental or circumstantial, especially when considering how profitable and advantageous her engagement with the New Thought movement would be. Drawing audiences from all walks of life means a greater audience, thus higher ratings, and therefore more money. In short and basically, anybody can be abducted by aliens, including you, and therefore you should watch Oz Encounters in order to know and prepare yourself for what could happen to you and anyone. Even if the majority of people are merely jumping on the bandwagon, the fact that the local milkman and poor Mrs. Doris down the lane claim to have been abducted by aliens and put onto a spaceship gives essential and unique credibility to such claims being made. What do the local milkman and poor Mrs. Doris have to gain from making such accusations? Therefore, their claims must be true, even if there's absolutely no concrete evidence as such. And besides, this could happen to anyone. However, just before writing The Secret, Barnes was not in the best place financially. She was recently divorced, television production wasn't going as well as initially expected, and she described herself as having wept uncontrollably during this period of her life. With regards to her career, it appears that the having no concrete evidence aspect of 90s paranormal television production was catching up on Barnes. But, fortunately, it was at this time that she was introduced to early 20th century New Thought writer Wallace D. Wattles. Wattles was the American author of the New Age book The Science of Getting Rich, published in 1910. Wattles tragically died at the young age of 51 after suffering long-term health implications. This was just after he had published The Science of Getting Rich and, coincidentally, The Science of Getting Well. His work was what ultimately gave birth to Barnes' interest in and research into what would then become The Secret. Manifestation is about manifesting things into your life intentionally as opposed to unintentionally or subconsciously. This is not to say that one's subconscious thought do not come into being. Indeed, this is one of my central issues with the theory. Thus, it is seemingly possible to manifest anything into your life. What you project into the world streams back into you. Metaphorically speaking, you speak to the universe and it speaks back to you. This is perceived to be the case with everybody, manifestors and non-manifestors alike. The epiphany comes when a disjointed or unintentional passing of two ships in the night kind of conversation between you and the universe becomes a dialogue, a conversation that is intended and recognized. You will speak to the universe will no doubt respond, but you, in turn, will know what the response is. You will know because you have intentionally asked the universe for said response. In writing The Secret, Barnes brought such ideas directly into the modern world. Nay, brought would be an understatement. Ronda gifted the many with what only the few had ever known in history. Unlike most spiritual teachings, The Secret does not caution against the modern world. In fact, being a participant in and benefiting from the modern world is essential to, in fact, living The Secret. And it most certainly does not uphold a strict division between things of the physical world and things of the spiritual, otherworldly world. Late German philosopher Hans-Georg Gadamer wrote a little goblet which I think perfectly sums up the relationship which Ronda Barnes sees herself as having with the modern Western world. A cultured society that has fallen away from its religious traditions expects more from art than art can deliver. The desire for a new mythology gives the artist and his task in the world consciousness of a new consecration. The artist is something like a secular savior. Of course, I take Gadamer out of context. He was talking about art. But in a sense, Barnes has created something, as would an artist, that is firstly incredibly appealing, and more importantly and uniquely, appears to live up to the great expectations which individuals of cultured societies are so desperately looking for in the absence of myths and religious convictions of old. That is moral direction and, perhaps more importantly, moral justification for actions taken. What better judge than the universe?
Basically, the message of The Secret is the message that I've been trying to share with the world on my show for the past 21 years. The message is that you're really responsible for your life. You are responsible for your life. I've known this. I've known this since The Color Purple.
The law of attraction I would describe as the most powerful law in the universe, and it is the law by which we are creating our lives. So whether we realize it or not, the law of attraction is working all of the time. Now, clearly, if you don't know what the law does, then you may not be creating the life you want.
Because I had drawn The Color Purple into my life. I didn't know Steven Spielberg. I didn't know Quincy Jones.
Like attracts like. And what we do is we attract into our lives the things that we want. And that is based on what we're thinking and feeling. Okay. It's not the other way.
But it is very true that the way you think creates reality for yourself. There are other factors going on. So it's not everything, but you really can change your own reality based on the way that you think. We all Human beings here on Earth
Yes.
create our own reality.
We do.
We create our own circumstances.
Yes.
We create our own circumstances by the choices that we make.
Yes.
And the choices that we make are fueled by our thoughts. So our thoughts are the most powerful thing that we have here on Earth. And based upon what we think, and we think determines who we are, we attract who we are into our lives. That's what
Yes.
you're saying.
That's exactly right.
That's okay.
Before November 2020, Barnes had done little to no media appearances beyond the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2006. Her only real interaction with the outside world was via her website, via emails called Ronda Barnes Secret Scrolls, and the publication of books following on from The Secret. In the meantime, the internet has in no way been deprived of its central message. The emergence of gurus, experts, visionaries, and influencers willing to sell you the tools toward your mental transformation and subsequent success story is in no short supply. The object is either directly to make money or indirectly to make money or inflate one's ego by garnering views and an online following. It is possible to categorize these individuals based on their target audience and many of the pronounced gender-specific concerns of each group. Notably, the broad target audience is without a doubt the citizens or residents of well-developed so-called first world countries, people of the rational free market economy. To target or even consider audiences beyond this one would bring the presuppositions and claims of law of attraction and manifestation theories to its knees. This is why it can be called a franchise, because there is clearly a target demographic, and one which is targeted in no way by chance, but because it has disposable income. This disposable income is an essential precondition. It is the only thing underlying what propels these theories to such exponential heights within our specific context and time in history. I do not believe that all public promoters of these methods to be manipulative fraudsters. In fact, some appear to believe wholeheartedly in what they preach. I see them as being more so enticed by the narrative and how perfectly it fits around their life experiences. It fits around what they have decided to see the world around them as being. A world that is on their side. A world that is good and beautiful and full of enough abundance, wealth and happiness for everyone. This mindset requires a lot of sacrifice, namely a strong willingness to never engage with negativity in the form of people, of current affairs, and of thoughts. I see this as being more overtly associated with the more female-oriented side of the spectrum. The female-orientated side of the Law of Attraction franchise is more directly true to the spiritual, mystical side of manifestation. Individuals are encouraged to embody an aesthetic involving mindfulness, self-care, positivity, and productivity. Most importantly, it involves demonstrations of gratitude for what one has and is yet to have. Vision boards are paramount. Scripting, that is, writing out what you want as if you already have it with dates, affirmations, and complete conviction. Journaling in order to program your life so that it goes into sync with the universe. Writing is essential, which is why all this scripting, journaling, and thus visualizing of your dream life is accompanied by methods that emphasize this. For instance, the 369 method. Young, attractive, mainly Caucasian influencers on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are the main exporters of Law of Attraction methods. Many videos emphasize how it is possible to manifest your crush into your life, how it is possible to manifest your ex back into your life, or how to manifest a text from said ex, or how to make yourself more attractive through manifestation techniques. Often, videos proclaim in bold letters that this video will change your life. Viewers are encouraged to purchase courses valued at hundreds of dollars or to join exclusive academies, all of which are run by an influencer who, we must remember, was just like you. They were also in a deadbeat job, a 9-to-5 job, accumulating debt, drinking too much, surrounding themselves with negative, low-vibe people and energy. A subscription to their YouTube channel or a following on Instagram will, without doubt, change your life forever. And if it doesn't, that means you need them more than ever before. Because, clearly, you are not manifesting correctly. The fault inadvertently lies with you, but they are here to guide you onto the right path. The male-oriented side of the Law of Attraction franchise is more so focused on entrepreneurial success, particularly an emphasis on hustling in order to become the CEO of your own life, as opposed to the messengers being attractive influencers trying to get views, clicks, and purchases from a predominantly young female audience. The messengers are mainly financial gurus and supposedly self-made entrepreneurs of the modern world. As I said before, our greater access to the means of social mobility, at least in theory, is what creates the sense of validity and authenticity in these guys.
The American dream, the dream of freedom, of success, of making your dreams a reality is real, I'm telling you. The ability to manifest reality, that persistence to never quit despite sometimes and most often being the only one that believes in your dream. These are just some of the things that I have used to create the life I have today.
It is okay for them to flex their wealth and lifestyle because, importantly, they came from exactly where you currently are. This is a point which they drive home as part of their brand and therefore as part of their appeal and trustworthiness. They all have a rags to riches story that ensued into them getting rid of all the negativity, ignoring the debt and hustling their way to the top in defiance of doubters, haters, and the herd. Being the CEO of your own life requires risk, similarly to how visualization for the young female manifester aspiring toward her dreams of becoming a girl boss or influencer requires sacrificing any ounce of negative energy in order to reshape reality in her own image.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Ultimately, both depend on the same central principle. If you want the results, you have to do this correctly. And if you fail, that is down to you not doing it correctly. Success is about mindset. These factions of female and male-oriented manifestors are not without interplay or overlap. There is no binary between the more spiritually inclined and the more entrepreneurial inclined manifestors. At the end of the day, they all want the same thing. And they are all a part of a franchise which has found itself to be incredibly profitable in a godless, precarious, capital-driven modern world. There is no God looking out for you from high above. There is no government safety net. You are no longer guaranteed a job for life. The climate is beyond right for this kind of thought. Something which explains its success more so than the thought itself, in fact, being true or real. And it is this point which leads me on to the darker side and the more harrowing aspects associated with manifestation and the law of attraction.
You're watching my video, and if you've been following my work for any length of time, you could see that we have a lot of subscribers, a lot of fans from around the world. Now you notice, I want you to look at a comment. I want you to look at a comment for this particular video, any video that I have. It's very, very interesting that the same video that I create, the same lesson, someone would say, this is phenomenal, this is the best lesson I've ever seen. Someone would say, oh, this sucks, this is horrible, this is BS. It is the same video. Why is that? Because we seek information that confirms what we already believe. You see, when you watch any one of my videos, you don't actually hear what I say. You don't hear a damn thing that I say. You hear what you want to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Now let me introduce this section with a little example of my own. Why is it that two theatregoers will come out of the exact same performance with two contrasting opinions? Of course, we cannot say that bias plays no part in it. The personal bias of one person will determine their conviction that they have just seen the best performance of Cats imaginable. Therefore, as Locke says, confirmation bias can stem from personal bias and personal convictions, opinions, what have you. But often it is as practical as where the two people were sitting. The fact that one person was sitting at the front of the theatre as opposed to somebody sitting at the back of the theatre can determine whether they enjoyed the performance or not. The person at the back of the theatre didn't enjoy the performance as much because they were at the back of the theatre and couldn't see. The bias comes from circumstance and situation. We are not born into this world. We are not born into this society with preconceived biases. These are largely shaped by what I will refer to as situational or circumstantial biases. The extent of our submission to our situations or circumstances depends on many things. Some of us are less enslaved to our situations and circumstances than others, but none of us is completely free of it. The fact that our personal bias is born from our situational bias therefore makes it impossible for the former to in fact trump over the latter. I may leave my mother's body and establish my own autonomy, but that does not mean that her blood does not run through my veins and give me life. Copywriting that one. The situations in which we find ourselves in influence us on a personal level. Right, so this is what we have established so far. Firstly, the law of attraction and manifestation demonstrate how it is possible for individuals to determine their own success, to be actors upon the world as opposed to mere agents of change and circumstance. This is because the universe is at your disposal. It is at your beck and call, which can be used to your advantage if you put in the time, the effort, and ultimately the laborious mental gymnastics. Secondly, so-called success stories and proponents of this take on New Age spiritualism are disproportionately based in modern, highly developed, industrial, and technologically proficient societies in which a free market has been well established.
Because we get what we expect. I'm open to the possibility that whatever happens,
Oh my God.
even the bad stuff, can lead to better things.
It is one thing to justify the increasing socio-economic inequalities within modern societies today, and even within the larger world. It is quite another thing to claim that negative or bad things visit those who have willed it upon themselves, due to them not manifesting the right thoughts and actions. It is not merely that the American dream is not everybody's dream, which irks me in the wrong way. The degradation of the poor, the degradation of the losers, the degradation of the herd, whose situations are what they are because they haven't manifested the right mindset. This is only a sliver of what this particular take on New Age spirituality can ensue into. In their 2010 essay titled Fight the Power, psychologists Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simmons highlight something that is so often overlooked. It is overlooked in the flood of success stories and seemingly chronological journeys of self-discovery and mastery over one's fate. If we hear only about the crazy coincidences, not the unconnected events, or even the non-events, then we get a distorted picture. When Barnes tells her readers to make a connection between the good things they do and the good things that come to them, she is focusing their attention on positive examples of the law of attraction, thereby reinforcing the illusion that it actually works. From approximately mid-1941 to 45, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population were systematically and methodically murdered by order of Germany's National Socialist Party. This constitutes the ethnic cleansing of at least 6 million European Jews in a matter of no more than 4 years. It is petrifying to think that in a span of a mere 4 years, a newly established European regime was able to routinely organize the murder of 6 million people based purely on their ethnicity. It is petrifying because the history of horrific human acts against the global Jewish population goes back to ancient times. Yet how was it that in a matter of 4 years, more Jewish people were persecuted than were, in total, persecuted from the initial pogroms up to the early 1940s? This ethnic cleansing was able to reach its heights because of bureaucracy. That is, because of the reign of interdependent, sophisticated, and meticulous administrative protocol and procedure. The reason why it was so difficult for prosecutors at the Nuremberg trials to put a concrete face to the murderer himself, Adolf Hitler, was because these crimes materialized themselves via modern and thus very new means. This was the implementation of industrial methods, of modern methods, in a bid to racially reorder and reconstruct the world in a national socialist image. To claim that you attract the good and the bad things into your life can be dangerously and heinously applied to the Shoah. In this clip from Steven Spielberg's adaptation of the book Schindler's Ark, itself based on the life of German industrialist Oskar Schindler, there is a heart-rending scene. This scene accurately depicts the infamous selection process of forced labourers, the majority of them Polish Jews transported to Plaszow concentration camp in Poland. This scene shows women rubbing their own blood into their cheeks and lips in order to appear healthy, in order to appear well enough to continue living in excruciating and inhumane conditions to escape being sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau. In The Secret, Barnes writes, "Often, when people first hear this part of The Secret, they recall events in history where masses of lives were lost, and they find it incomprehensible that so many people could have attracted themselves to the event. By the law of attraction, they had to be on the same frequency as the event. It doesn't necessarily mean they thought of that exact event, but the frequency of their thoughts matched the frequency of the event. If people believe they can be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they have no control over outside circumstances, those thoughts of fear, separation, and powerlessness, if persistent, can attract them to being in the wrong place at the wrong time." What this quotation literally means is that if you make it known to the universe, intentionally or otherwise, that you are lacking in any control, that you are helpless, that you are a lost cause, then the universe will respond exactly. I suppose this means that the SS mastered the law of attraction and manifestation prior to everybody else. They were the greater few, and they themselves, coincidentally, believe themselves to be of the greater few in the world.
Whose bright idea was it to get rid of him?
In The Law of Attraction, The Basic Teachings of Abraham, published in 2007, Hicks writes, "I used to be extremely disturbed when a person's rights were violated by violence on a person, or by someone forcefully taking someone else's property. But then I got to the point that I see all those things they're doing with others as games that they're playing, more or less agreements that they have between one another, spoken or unspoken. I've gotten somewhat better at not feeling their pain." But this is all too real for New Age spiritualism. It necessarily has to remain within its essential mentality in order to justify and glorify its mental science.
You know, when you see those paintings where you just have to shift, you know,
The
there's
3D.
Yes. Where there's two paintings in the one,
Yes.
right? And first of all, you can see the one really, really clearly, and somebody says to you, there's a woman on a horse in that painting, right? But you can only see, you know, the chipmunks in the corner. You can't see the woman on the horse. And they're like, you've just got to change your perspective ever so slightly, and the woman on the horse will come into view. Well, that is exactly the same as it is to see the truth. Exactly. Rubens' vase. Exactly. Yeah. And so what do people see? Do they see a vase, or do they see
two women, right? Yeah.
Right.
There are, globally, a plethora of human tragedies occurring to this day. To tell mothers in Yemen that it is negativity, their mindsets, which are keeping them in a poverty-stricken rut, because, as Dan Locke puts it, there is no excuse for dying poor even if you were born poor, is to threaten that very special, although incredibly fine connection that humanity has to continually nurture, but seems to be increasingly taking for granted. That is, empathy, or the ability to reimagine oneself in the metaphorical shoes of another. Empathy is selfish. I imagine myself in your predicament because I don't want to be in that predicament myself. But it is a collective selfishness that is responsible for the creation of societies, of civilizations, families, communities. It is at the foundation of moral accountability, of anything nearing justice, and of meaning at large. The time and context in which we live in is right for New Age spiritualism. Productivity is the mantra that sells and gives so very many people satisfaction. Why shouldn't the universe at large recognize those who have seemingly been the most productive, the most deserving of her recognition? It is not that the system or moving cogs of this modern life are stacked against you, regardless of how hard you try. It is your mind that is stacked against this society and, as such, against you becoming Ronda, Oprah, Dan, or any number of influencer whose journey you ought to look up to. I mean, if we mastered mental science, we'd all be as rich as Dan and co. And if we all were as rich as Dan and co, we wouldn't have to buy his course. We wouldn't have to, or even be interested in, the secret franchise. What would the need be for motivational speakers and influencers? In fact, if we were all rich, the word itself would become insignificant. I mean, there would be no poor people to compare it to. So, in a sense, what would rich even mean if we all, as the secret franchise so desires, mastered the law of attraction? There is so much that doesn't make sense, but at the end of the day, nothing that is seemingly divine or otherworldly makes all that much sense. The inclusion of multiple experts, and especially a plethora of ordinary people, gives New Age spiritualism its credibility and the widespread representation where the real money is at. We saw the importance of the ordinary person and their narrative in Ronda Barnes' initial attempts at success in television production. The simplicity of the message is even more remarkable because of its reach and the logical inability of countering its claims. As I said before, to dispute its claims only invites the explanation that the disputer in question is having her doubts and skepticism reinforced by the universe. There will always be scams, MLMs, and exploitative schemes trying to make as much money from as many ordinary, impressionable, and vulnerable people as possible. There is not, however, a seemingly moral system, that is, a system which guides individuals in the thoughts and actions in their lives, that so overtly and successfully absolves responsibility or credibly places blame and accountability upon victims of everyday life and circumstance. Not even Ayn Rand can compete with this. I am not primarily trying to expose. I am more so trying to analyze, critique, and understand. I would encourage you to do the same. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate your time. Have a good day.